I believe that America's best days can still be ahead, and I want to lead us forward. Join me now in the Reid Revolution.
And a very good Monday morning to you on this President's Day, George Washington's birthday, or at least when we celebrate George Washington's birthday. And as a native Virginian, I think that that's pretty important for me to single out George Washington, make sure he gets credit on this President's Day. So glad you're with us. Hope you have the day off and that you're not stressed out. Maybe you're just relaxing at home. I am so glad we took Friday off after my big visit to Mar-a-Lago. If you want to see the pictures, they're on the John Reid Facebook page, the Reid Revolution Facebook page. You know, I've been to Mar-a-Lago a couple of times for different events, and it's such a really, I mean, even if you hate Donald Trump, come on. It's just a very, very historic and beautiful place, an interesting place. And if it wasn't for Donald Trump, that place really might have been bulldozed. The history of how he saved it and brought it back to life, lived there for a long time. I mean, I guess he's still got the owner's suite that he and Melania live in, but, turned it into the Mar-a-Lago Club, where it is one of the most sought after invitations probably in the country. Come on, think of a place. I mean, I know the Trump haters hate it. No matter where Trump is, they hate him, they hate everything about it. But if you're a normal person, if you're not mentally ill, if you're not a hater, what else would you be more excited about? I mean, other than getting a ticket to a sporting event that you want to go to, going to Mar-a-Lago really is a remarkable experience. And if you've done any checking on the history of the place and Marjorie Merriweather Post and the fabulous parties at the turn of the century and everything, it's just and if you study architecture at all, it's really a remarkable spot. So go check out those pictures. It won't take you long. It's an interesting spot to be in Mar-a-Lago. And here's the little hint. I had a whole bunch of people this weekend who were saying, how can I go to Mar-a-Lago? That's what I was asking during the first Trump term. Like, no, that's weird. I don't get invited. I found a couple of events where the public can buy a ticket. Now, nothing's cheap. I warn you. It's, you're not going to get in there with a $50 Groupon or something to some event, but they have really great events that you can buy a ticket to and go down to Florida and, there's security and everything, but, unless you're some psycho, you'll get to go to the event and see the place up close. And that's different than being invited to sit at Donald Trump's table, but still you get to brag to your friends. I was just in Mar-a-Lago. And if you go in March, or the end of February or March, like I did when it's still cold in the mid-Atlantic, you can be glad you took the trip, regardless of how that turns out. So glad to be back in Richmond today. There is a lot going on, and I don't know if you've noticed, Republicans are animated right now. I don't know if they can keep this going all the way to April 21st, but Virginia Republicans are hyped and angry, and they should be, about the Democrats trying to steal their votes and stomp specifically on the votes of rural voters all across the Commonwealth of Virginia with this redistricting plan, the gerrymandering plan. Virginians made a decision about 5 years ago that they were going to not allow partisan gerrymandering. This has been debated for decades. It's not something new. It predates Donald Trump. I remember in the 80s talking about, the Democrats are in charge, and the Republicans got in charge. And it's like, which party gets to draw the lines for which party? And, this is so unfair. The delegates all carve out their own district to make sure their house is still in the district, so nobody has to move. They take the strongest person and they try to, of the opposing party, and they try to cut them out. This has been a long-running tradition, and not a good one, and a long-running debate. So 5 years ago, we had, after a lot of consternation, a statewide referendum on a constitutional amendment. You put things in the Constitution instead of passing a law because you're serious about them, and you want to make sure that it's a fundamental principle of everything that we're doing going forward. I actually think that the constitutional amendment we passed in Virginia is the role model for the other 49 states. It says we're not going to allow this. It's still going to be partisanship. People are not going to like each other. I mean, even if it was like the old days where the Republicans and the Democrats were a lot closer in alignment on basic principles, they're still going to argue. It's still a tug of war. It's still, I mean, have you ever been in a club where everybody joined the club because they fundamentally enjoy whatever group activities you're doing? I mean, people are there for a reason. They get along. They're in the club together. There's still a fight, right? Who's going to be the president? Who's going to be the vice president? Who's going to be the membership chair? Who's going to be the person who puts together the events? Whenever you're picking who's going to run things, there's always, I think, a little bit of tug of war. We're so far past that now. I mean, it's a fundamental fist fight over which vision of Virginia and which vision of America is going to win, and who's going to survive and who's not going to survive. Is it going to be the America and the Virginia that we've grown up in, or is it going to be, uh, a fundamental rewrite of the entire culture? I'm not for the fundamental rewrite of the entire culture because I've read the book before. I've seen what happens in countries where you go down the road of socialist taking care of everybody. Everybody gets lulled into thinking that the government is going to take care of them, and then the government can't take care of everybody and doesn't want to. And if you ever questioned the sensitivities or the morals, or will these people that I've been in a conflict with, will they take care of me? Look at the way they're behaving today. They're stomping all over anybody they disagree. They're putting people into the streets knowing that they may get killed by attacking police officers, and they're cheering that on. A responsible leader wouldn't do that. I mean, unless you want a civil war. I don't want a civil war. A responsible leader would say, "Hey, I got it. I'm gonna argue this position on your behalf. You don't need to go into the streets. You don't need to behave that way. You don't need to put yourself in danger. We're not looking for marauders in the streets." But that's not how Democrats are behaving. Democrats are encouraging this behavior. They're applauding it, saying it's a noble cause, even as they witness the violence. And we're going to talk about this violence in particular with Rosemary Jenks, who is the co-founder of the Immigration Accountability Project. We're going to talk to her a little bit later in the program about the message that the Trump administration has sent by announcing that they're essentially pulling out of Minneapolis, drawing down in Minneapolis. I think that's a problem. I think it sends a signal that the left has won. But perhaps from a PR standpoint, someone can show me the data and say, look, we're just getting clobbered on that. I think you're going to get clobbered no matter what you do. If you enforce immigration laws, you're going to get clobbered by the people who don't want you to enforce them. So you might as well enforce them. And you might as well send a signal that we're serious about this. And I think the Trump administration, in all candor, made a mistake in 2020 by being too passive when there were a bunch of radical whack jobs in the streets setting things on fire and pulling down statues and attacking innocent people. I think we sent a signal that we were weak then, instead of sending in the National Guard, instead of saying we're not going to allow American cities to burn. This will not be tolerated. But, one thing I can't argue with is that the PR battle has been brutal for a couple of months now. And that does take a toll on your election numbers, but it also convinces your core base that you're serious, that all the work they did, all the Christmas parties they weren't invited to, all the negativity that they've endured was worth it because you're actually doing what you said you were going to do. If I hear one thing pretty consistently from conservatives, it's we vote, we work, we knock on doors, we give money, we take the abuse that comes from being a Republican, a Trump Republican or a George W. Bush Republican. It doesn't matter who it is. And then you guys don't do what you say you're going to do. You back away from the fight. And at some point, it becomes humiliating and it's not worth it anymore. You may still have strong beliefs, but do you really want to be ostracized from society if the people that you're sending to do the work won't do the work, as uncomfortable as it is? So I say all of that to set the stage for one of the issues we'll talk about with Tim Anderson, the former delegate, noted attorney down in Virginia Beach. He's coming on in our next segment. Virginia Republicans do seem to be angry and motivated about this gerrymandering plan, and they're looking for leadership. And there are a couple of different groups. Weird. I don't exactly know how all this has had. There are a couple of different groups that have popped up that are leading the fight on no gerrymandering. Jason Miyares, the former attorney general, has somehow paired up with Eric Cantor, the former congressman, who I think has access to a lot of political money in New York. They're doing one thing, and if I understand it correctly, former governor, former senator, my former boss, George Allen, is paired up with another group, and they're doing another thing. I don't know if they're working in tandem or what the deal is, but there are two different groups out there that I'm aware of that are trying to raise money to put ads on television. I'm hoping they're going to think through the messaging. Can we be honest? The messaging on this thing in Southwest Virginia is very different from a messaging that will be effective in Northern Virginia. And Democrats, they're shady, but I have to give them credit. They figured out early on, and they beat the Republicans to the line on this, that fairness is the buzzword here. And so they have effectively stolen the word fair away from the lexicon for conservatives. They're lying, which shouldn't surprise anybody, because there's nothing that's fair about this plan to take 6 Democrat seats and 5 Republican seats representing the people of Virginia in the United States House of Representatives and collapse it, redraw the maps, and make it 10 Democrats and 1 Republican seat in the House. And the 1 Republican seat is this huge district that takes up all of you rural people. That's how they see you. They think you're country hicks. They think you're stupid bumpkins. Can I just be honest? That's what they think. They hate you in Southwest Virginia. Democrats hate you. They don't like you. They have disrespect for you. They don't like the fact that you're Christians. They don't like the fact that you don't live in an urban area. They don't like the fact that it's not diverse enough. They don't respect the work you do. If you work with your hands, or you work in a mine, or you work in something that's not a white-collar job, they do not respect you. They do not like you. I don't know. I mean, you need to understand they have contempt for you and everything about your life. You don't wear the right clothes. You don't listen to the right music. You don't go to the theater every weekend. You're not morally questioning everything that's out there. You have the same basic belief system that perhaps a previous generation had. You're everything they hate. And you vote Republican, so that seals the deal. So they're going to do everything they can to stomp you. I mean, one of the tragedies of what happened with last year's election is that the Democrats look at that map. I promise you, they're at the Capitol. They look at that map and they see the counties in Southwest Virginia, where I went 26 times during the campaign. I used to go for personal reasons, camping and events and stuff, even before I was running for office. But I went over and over and over again because all I heard was people in Southwest don't think any candidates really care about them. So what do you do when you hear that people don't think that you care about them? You show up, or you should, right? How else do you do it? You have to put in the time and go talk to them and listen and try to understand what it is that they're looking for from government. And it's different than, a single parent household in a city that wants a paycheck delivered to the mailbox every month, to cover their lifestyle. What Southwest wants is very different from what that urban family, white or black, is looking for. They're going to screw you. I'm sorry. I know that when I use that term, it upsets some people, but you need to be upset. They're going to deliberately screw you. They have no reason to look after you. They're not going to send you one extra dollar. They'll make sure that the highway doesn't crumble because they need to make sure that the trucks can get from one side of the state to other states and they can collect taxes on it, which is about the only thing they care about. They hate you. And they're going to stomp on your vote and make sure that if they have to have you represented at all, and there's just a core there's a core group of Republican voters in that part of the state that they can't draw a line that will eclipse you, they're going to make sure there's only one person. And then when it comes to state governance, they're going to stomp all over you. So this was what was weird about last year. The reaction in Southwest Virginia, and it's not everybody. So if you're one of the people who was motivated to vote, please don't think I'm beating up on you. But your reaction can be, I don't care, throw my hands up, let them do what they're going to do. Well, they're coming after you. And if you don't see it with this plan, where you only get one vote in Congress, then wait till the budgeting process happens and they start slashing and burning everything that you care about, and they start making take away your gun rights. I mean, I would assume that at some point that's going to touch a nerve, right, in Southwest Virginia, where it's not just about hunting. It really is about, hey, I'm out here working in a place where I can't call the cops. And even if I did call the cops, it's going to be 30 minutes before they get there. So I'm on my own. If there's any problem with anybody or anything out here, I would think that the gun rights issue would motivate people. And a lot of Southwest voters just didn't bother to vote in 2025. So this is not me being nasty about it, but there are consequences for that. And you're seeing them. You're seeing them right now. You're seeing open hostility towards Southwest Virginia. So the good thing is, for the moment, and this has to be sustained all the way to April 21st, it looks like voters across the state are motivated to stop the gerrymandering. And it's got to happen, or the Republican Party is essentially neutered on the federal level. And of course, the Democrats will claim that Donald Trump started all of this. That's not true. As I say, gerrymandering has been happening for decades. And I think we had a couple of guests on last week who very clearly explained how in Massachusetts and California and in a number of other states, the Democrats effectively run the state and have for decades. Like, yeah, you exist and you get to vote, but your vote is meaningless. If you're a conservative, your vote doesn't count, because we have drawn the lines where we find the pockets of Democrat voters and we maximize the impact that those neighborhoods and regions are going to have, and we minimize the impact that you're going to have, so you will not be represented. It's corrupt. It is unfair. But see, they've chosen to push the word fair and try to attach it to Donald Trump and say that Donald Trump is the one who started this, because they're counting on you staying home, and they're counting on everybody who hates Donald Trump in Northern Virginia turning out. And, I lived in D.C., I lived in Alexandria. Now, certainly, I've traveled all over the state. The people of Northern Virginia who despise Republicans and despise Donald Trump, they're going to show up, I think. I think they're going to be motivated to turn out. So now it's a question of who actually shows up when we start voting on this on March the 6th through April 21st. And for someone who shows up to do their civic duty, who reads the description, it's all about fairness. The ballot description is, let's keep this fair, and then we'll go back to the old way with the no gerrymandering in 2030 with the new census. I mean, how stupid do you think I am? Seriously, come on. You think anybody's going to buy that? No, they're not going back. They're not going back anywhere. This is not an attempt to right a perceived wrong from Donald Trump. This is an attempt to take power. It is a grotesque abuse of power to get more power. and to stomp all over the people they hate. And you better be ready to push back on it. So we'll talk more about the gerrymandering plan that the Democrats have pushed, and the Supreme Court's decision not to get involved. Man, what do you do when the umpires are no longer interested in being the umpires? For whatever reason, maybe they've been threatened, or maybe they're in on it. There have been a couple of different decisions in the last few years that have made me really question the Supreme Court of Virginia. One of them goes back to the Robert E. Lee statue. There was a covenant. We'll build this statue. We'll give you this statue. It is something, even if you hate Robert E. Lee, it is something of value, but you have to keep it up. You have to take care of it. And the Supreme Court of Virginia basically nullified property law in Virginia and said, no, what they agreed to then is not something that we have to agree to now. Okay, well, hey, thanks for letting me know, because I'll be damned if I would give anything to the state of Virginia. I would be damned if I would believe that any sort of contractual deal related to property is legitimate anymore. Give it 20 years, new board of supervisors, new governor, new board of historic resources comes in. They decide that they don't agree with what happened 20 years ago. Who's to say? The agreement doesn't count for anything. The contract doesn't hold from generation to generation, apparently. I think that's problematic. I understand that the statue was one very unique circumstance, but the principle of law has been undermined in Virginia. And I think this is it's just a very odd arrangement here. And the decision that was made last week is very concerning for me as an observer, as a non-lawyer observer. I'm not stupid. I know I think I know what message is being sent here. We're going to spend millions of dollars. We're going to allow this process to move forward, and then we'll decide whether it's legal or not. But what if the people vote to allow the gerrymandering in this case, but then the court has determined that this wasn't done correctly? What then? Are you going to overrule the people of Virginia? I mean, it's such a horrible precedent on a lot of different levels. And this isn't what we pay you to do. We pay you to make these judgments. The ump at the World Series doesn't get to say, oh, you know what? Go ahead and run this play. Put the score on the board, and then after the game, we'll figure out whether you can't operate that way. You can't operate that way. And there's something weird going on. It may just be hyperpartisanship. I don't know whether Tim Anderson will want to touch it. I mean, most of the attorneys that I talk to are terrified of the judges. Tim doesn't seem to be terrified of anybody, but we'll talk to him in a couple of minutes. And then it is President's Day. Washington and Lincoln both commemorated today, and I just want to end on this. Ponder for a second, based on what you know growing up about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, right? I think they still teach about George Washington and Abraham Lincoln in the schools. So you should have some basic understanding, where George Washington's from, Virginia, Abraham Lincoln, Illinois, right? What do you think these men from very different eras in American history in the past, what would they say if they were here today looking at our situation? Yeah, cool. This is great. Insurrection in the streets, attacking the police officers, not enforcing the law. Yeah, I get it. I understand why you're doing this. Taxing away almost 50% of your income to pay for people who refuse to work, and not for the common good, but to pay for other individuals to have their basics in life covered. That's where most of this money is going. Would they be okay with this? Would they be, these are very different people, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. What would they say? I think it's an interesting mental exercise. It's a good opportunity to go and just read the Wikipedia page on the two of them and opine in your own mind about whether the founding fathers and the people of the past would buy into the type of society that we have created for ourselves today. I suspect they wouldn't look very kindly on it. And I don't mean about, women being able to vote, black people being able to vote, gays being accepted in society. I mean, they might, I have no doubt they would kind of be shocked at all of that, probably. But I'm talking about the fundamentals of how we live and what our principles are, this concept of freedom. You should think through that. Are we living up to the principles of freedom, or are we tossing them away? I think an honest answer might be surprising and unpleasant for us, and we should try to fix that in our time. Let's take a quick break. We will come back, and the former delegate from Virginia Beach, Tim Anderson, will join us. We'll talk about this gerrymandering issue, and I'll try to get him to talk about the Supreme Court, too, when we return on the Reid Revolution. Virginia Forum ad and the Hakeem Jeffries. Back here on the Reid Revolution, I want to take a moment and tell you about the Virginia Forum, which I hope you may have attended in the past. It is the premier speaker series in Central Virginia, where we bring in individuals who are often marginalized and silenced and give them the stage, give them an opportunity to speak to large crowds and get on the speaker's circuit. We've had Douglas Murray, the author I know you've seen on television many, many times. He was our first speaker. We've had the actor Kevin Sorbo, who played Hercules, who took his money and started his own movie studio. Andy Ngo, the citizen journalist who uncovered Antifa. And then, of course, Antifa tried to kill all of us here in Richmond, or at least threatened to, and caused all kinds of trouble. Well, coming up on Friday, the 27th of February at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center in the evening is Jamie Franklin, who is originally from Northern California. Yes, we're inviting a Californian to come speak at the Virginia Forum. She went to the University of California at Berkeley. When I lived in California, UC Berkeley instead of Berkeley. So it's amazing that she's conservative. But she started a website called The Conservator, a lifestyle brand dedicated to empowering the next generation of young conservative Christian women. And look, conservatives have a strong female base, but when you look at who is driving the leftist narrative, it's leftist women. So I thought it would really be interesting to bring in Jamie Franklin and hear her vision for how she mobilizes Christian conservative women to engage head to head with these whack jobs who are in the streets with purple hair and 10 nose piercings and screaming and yelling at police officers and acting like they really care about kids when they also propose abortion on the day of birth. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So Jamie Franklin will be with us. Now, you can get tickets for the Virginia Forum by going to thevirginiacouncil.org, thevirginiacouncil.org. That's the group that I helped found 5 or 6 years ago after all the Antifa garbage happened here in Virginia. And our goal is to bring in and platform a lot of people who have been shut out and have been deplatformed. Jamie Franklin at the Virginia Forum, coming up on Friday, the 27th of February at the Glen Allen Cultural Arts Center here in Central Virginia. It's easy to get to. Go to thevirginiacouncil.org and get your tickets. And you can get a VIP ticket and meet Jamie, and I think it's going to be a really great evening. All right, let's listen to what the leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives had to say this weekend about the efforts in Virginia by Democrats to crush Republican votes and take a 6-5 relationship, 6 Democrat votes, 5 Republican votes in the House of Representatives, and make it 10 Democrats, 1 Republican. Here's Hakeem Jeffries.
So there was a big ruling in Virginia that just came down the pike here. Potentially, this will go as a ballot referendum in April to voters in Virginia to decide whether or not to give you guys up to 4 more seats. This would be a 10-1 difference between Democrats and Republicans in a pretty purple state. Is this overreaching on the Democrats' part?
Republicans started this redistricting war and Democrats have made clear we're going to finish it. We're going to make sure that there is a fair national map. So at the end of the day, it's the voters who get to decide who's in the majority after the November midterm elections and not Donald Trump. When they go low, we strike back. That's the Democratic approach, and the Republicans are feeling it right now.
When they go low. Oh, it was Michelle Obama who said, when they go low, we go high, which wasn't true, but at least that sounded nicer. I appreciate the candor. It's not an objective analysis. When they go low, we strike back. I mean, basically, they are very angry that Republicans in other parts of the country have decided to redraw their maps, which Democrats have been doing for years. I mean, there's no intellectual honesty here on display from these guys at all. And now they're going to crush the people that they don't like in Virginia. They don't give a damn about it. And the problem here is that you've got so many voters in Northern Virginia that they just might get away with it. Former Virginia delegate to the House of Delegates, Tim Anderson from Virginia Beach, the attorney, is with us on this President's Day to talk through this. Hi, Tim. We chatted briefly last week about this ruling from the Supreme Court that's going to let this happen. What's your take on it?
Well, I think that the only objective way to take what the Supreme Court said is that they don't want to make a decision. This is a political issue, and the courts hate getting in the middle of politics. So what the court's basically saying is the referendum will go forward, and if no is the majority, then the case is moot. And if yes is the majority, then the Supreme Court will find a path to say, we really shouldn't be interfering with the will of the people. And so I don't think we're going to see the Supreme Court make a decision that's going to administratively make a decision either way. If the court says no, if the people say no, the court will clearly say it's moot. If the people say yes, then the court would be in an incredibly difficult position that we spent millions of dollars to have an election, and the people voted, and then the court is then going to undo that. I just don't see that happening. I don't think the Supreme Court wants to do it, and I think that's precisely why, instead of doing expedited briefing schedules, they push this out to after the election. So this is a punt. This is in football a punt, and that's what the Supreme Court did.
Well, the vote on this is certainly political, and the end result has political consequences. But is it not concerning that Democrats and Republicans in the past set up a process in law that's supposed to be followed with a timetable so that, at least hypothetically, everybody can be fully educated on these important issues before they take a vote? And that, I think objectively has not been followed. Why doesn't the court have a concern about the process? I thought that was, pretty fundamental to the law, is that you've got to follow the process. Whether I like the end result or not, you have to follow the process.
Well, you're right. So I think what's important, though, is to understand what Tazewell did, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about what Tazewell did.
This is that individual judge in Tazewell County.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's before the Supreme Court. Tazewell didn't enjoin the election in Tazewell. The people in Tazewell are still going to get to vote for this ballot referendum. What he enjoined was the clerk of court from publishing the announcement on the outside board of the courthouse, because there wasn't 90 days to do that. So he enjoined her, and that's what you're saying is the process. And technically, I don't know who goes to the courthouse to get courthouse notices about things, but fundamentally, that would be the anomaly, is that in every other courthouse in Virginia, there's a notice on the notice board that there is going to be an election on April 21st. But there's not.
But the reason for that, decision in Tazewell was that the voting started prior to the voting in the general election in 2025 began, 1 million people had cast their votes without contemplating the impact that that vote could have on this constitutional amendment. And
Well,
if is that correct?
Well, no, so here's the problem with what the Tazewell judge did, and I think it was probably deliberate. You're right. The judge said the constitutional amendment is void because there wasn't the intervening election question. He made that. But he didn't enjoin the election. And that's very important for people to understand. The only thing that he enjoined was the clerk from posting the notice on the courthouse wall. It would have been different if the judge in Tazewell had said, we can't have elections in Tazewell. That would have been a materially different thing. But the only anomaly that's going to come out of this is that the people of Tazewell aren't going to be able to go to their courthouse and see whether there's a notice on the board. And I think that was intentional in how this all gets worked up. And so when you're at the Supreme Court level, you're at the Supreme Court level on the question, should the clerk of court be allowed to post the notice on the board? That's the injunction. And the Supreme Court said, we're not going to get involved in that because I think they think, like everybody else thinks, nobody goes to the courthouse to look for notices, right? But then secondly, and more importantly, the court has said, we're not going to rule on whether the judge was right or wrong about whether there was a intervening election or not until after the voters speak. And you have to know how the Supreme Court works on this. What they're saying and what they're signaling is they're okay with it. I mean, fundamentally, that's what they're signaling because they could have stopped the election. They could have done expedited briefing schedules. But what they're saying is by allowing the election to go forward, they're signaling that they're okay with it and they don't feel like that's a constitutional violation. So it's more important what they didn't say than what they did say. That's how courts work, at least at the appellate level.
Yeah, well, it's, as a non-attorney, it's concerning to me because I think that it tosses the rule book out. And, if you're going to play a game, this isn't a game, it's very serious, but if you're going to play a game, there's a rule book for a reason. And, it's not like someone else created it. These people who were sitting right there in the legislature today were involved in crafting the rule book. And so it's concerning that kind of takes a back seat to the process. Process in a society like ours is pretty important, or you do find that people get run over. The tyranny of the majority winds up winning the day, and that's concerning. But having said that, if you look at the numbers, they're probably more leftist Democrats in Virginia than there are conservative Republicans. But it's a question of who actually turns out between March 6th and April 21st to vote on this thing, to either pass it or push it under. What's your instinct on where things are today? It seems like Republicans are, at least the activists are engaged on this.
Well, the activists were engaged in the Winsome Sears campaign too. Fundamentally, I think here's the thing. In order to win, we have to get Democrats to vote no. I mean, bottom line, there's just not going to be enough Republicans that are going to overcome the Democrats, because the way the Democrats have done this, and much better than we have, is all the mail-out ballots that are going to go out. 75% of them are Democrats. So, there's going to be a bunch, millions of absentee ballots that are going to go out. And the Democrats are very good at returning those ballots, and their messaging is to vote yes. It means we have to overcome a lot of ballots with either Republicans voting or getting Democrats to vote. And here's really the rub, and I heard what you said earlier, and I don't disagree with what you've said about who started it and all of that. But the Democrats view this as President Trump starting this in Texas, and that's true. He did. Sure, California has 52 congressional districts, and there's only 9 Republicans Of course they've been manipulating the maps, but none of them have been manipulating the maps in the middle of a census, like in the halfway part of our 10-year cycle. Trump started this. And so Democrats are saying, fight back against Trump by voting yes.
Which
And
motivates their people.
that's right. And so for us, I think our side needs to start saying, Trump started this. He was wrong. He shouldn't have done that. I think we have to be authentic because Democrats have, if they just see us saying, oh, well, we didn't start it, it wasn't us, that's disingenuous. I think fundamentally to get reasonable Democrats that voted for Glenn Youngkin to vote no on this, people that voted to put this constitutional amendment in place to begin with, to come back to us and vote no, I think we have to full throat say, yeah, Trump screwed up here. And we're sorry he did it, and we don't want to see Virginia go this way. I think that creates authenticity. And we have got to get Democrats to vote. If we don't, vote no. If we don't, there's no mathematical equation for Republicans to overcome this in Virginia. Democrats have to be with us. And right now, the messaging is Trump started it. This is how you can fight back. And everybody's motivated to say yes to fighting against Trump, regardless of what the disaster it's going to do to the state.
It is a tough spot to be in a state like Virginia for someone who is pro-Trump, because the second you say anything negative about Trump as a Republican candidate, I mean, your email box is probably filled with people who get mad every time you have offered a critique of Trump. And it, I guess we'll see. Does it suppress the core Republican vote that you need? I mean, not to bring up Winsome again, but I do think it is a lesson. Winsome Sears, the lieutenant governor, got involved in the primary for who was going to be the Republican nominee. She was critical of President Trump, and people never really got over that. Even the election's over, he wins, she's running for governor, she's saying some nice things about Trump, but the Trump people never really forgave her for that. I think that's a fair statement. And I wonder, how do you thread that needle of being honest about your assessment of Texas and other states without ticking off the Trump people and them choosing not to show up? I mean, they should show up regardless of what they think because of an individual comment, because everything's on the line here. But in a practical reality, you tick them off and they stay home, it seems.
Well, I think you're right, but fundamentally, Trump's never broke 45% in Virginia, not once.
Yeah,
And
true.
so there's just not enough people that love Trump in Virginia to win something. The only way we can win in Virginia is we have to walk a needle. We have to thread this needle very carefully, and we have to say, yeah, we think Trump's doing a great job over here and over here and over here, but he's not doing a great job over here and over here and over here. And we have to be able to do that. And everybody has to understand that that's how you bring authenticity to Democrat voters. Because if you're going to win a statewide election, whether it's for U.S. Senate or whether it's for this ballot referendum or whether it's going to be for governor, Democrats have to vote for you. Soft, moderate Democrats have to be able to vote for you because we don't have enough Republicans in the state to just straight up be a party of Republicans. And so I think we just have to be able to agree, and the people who support Trump have to be able to say, yeah, this guy can make some mistakes here and there, but he's still a good president. But he can make some mistakes, and they completely underestimated this starting the mid-cycle district.
Oh, they did. They did.
And,
they kicked a hornet's nest.
We got to be able to say that. We got to be able to say that and say, yeah, they made a big mistake and we're screwed now. And we hopefully want you Democrats to say, we recognize that he was wrong. Nobody's saying that in the Republican Party. No major people are saying that. But I think if we came out with that and said, yeah, what he did was wrong, shouldn't have done it, I think that would bring authenticity and would bring Democrats to our side. And if we don't have them, we're going to get smoked. This is going to be 65-35 when it's all said and done. And when the Supreme Court sees that, there's no way they're going to undo it.
Right. Yeah. I'm certain that's true. Is there money coming in? Are you hearing anything about money from out of the state coming in? Hakeem Jeffries says he's going to spend as much money as it takes for Democrats to win. And look, that's when you realize that the future of the country is really on the line here. If Republican seats are evaporated, and I got news for everyone, if you lose someone like Rob Whitman, who is number 2 on armed services and can't make sure that Virginia is taken care of when it comes to military contracts, there are a lot of Virginians who are going to be hurt. Abigail Spanberger talks so much about how she's going to protect Virginia jobs. Oh, you just wait and see what's about to happen if you get some rookie Democrat social justice warrior instead of a serious legislator like Rob Whitman and Jen Kiggans, who are going to fight for Virginia jobs. I mean, there is a heck of a lot on the line here. Is there money coming in to do the legwork on television and radio that's required to motivate these voters?
I have not heard positive things coming from the conversations I've had with people that are sitting in rooms. There's nothing positive that I'm hearing. But I will say this. The 10-1 map that the Democrats have drawn is pretty favorable, all things being considered, to a seat like Jen Kiggans. Jen Kiggans can win her seat under this new 10-1 map. It is very possible that the only way Democrats can do a 10-1 map is they have to dilute the heck out of Northern Virginia. And by doing what they're doing, they really are not creating strongholds in places where a person like Jen Kiggans could win. So who knows how the actual election is going to go in November, but fundamentally, we should do everything we possibly can to start finding ways to message to Democrats. I mean, and that's it. Not the hard, crazy Hakeem Jeffrey Democrats, but the people right in the middle that voted for this constitutional amendment that said we don't want politicians to do that. We need to be able to message to them that what they're doing is wrong. What Trump did was wrong. What the Democrats are doing is wrong. We just need to say no to all of it. And I think if we, as a party, would do that, sure, it's going to make some Trump people mad if you say anything critical about President Trump, but we have to really, really think about that, because even Jen Kiggans, while she still might be able to win, it does put her in a much more difficult position to do it, and we get wiped off the map. I mean, and then we get wiped off the map. Democrats get control of Congress, and then Trump's neutered for the next 2 years.
Oh, yeah. It is going to be a terrible situation for those last 2 years. I think it's going to, even if they've got one seat and the Democrats are in charge, it's going to be rough. But if they have some sort of, big number, which I think is possible as it stands today, Trump's going to be holding on for dear life just to survive those last 24 months.
California's going to give them, 5 more seats?
Yeah.
So you'll get 5 more seats in California. You'll pick 3 or 4 up in Virginia. That's plenty to take over the House. That's
right.
They will take over the House just with what California did and what Virginia may do.
Why do you think Virginia Democrats have so much money readily available, and it does not appear that Republicans do?
Oh, it's simple. That's simple, because California has 52 congressional seats and only 9 Republicans, and now they're soon only going to have 4. So in California, they have gerrymandered their lines so well that Republicans have no shot out there of winning anything. Even though there's 35 to 40% of Republicans in California, they are not in competitive contests. So all the money that should be spent in California for their contested elections pours into states like Virginia. And that's exactly what happened in my delegate race. The guy I was running against for delegate was going to California to get money. And so there's just, they have a lot of money there. They don't have to spend it on elections. And so they send it out to states like Virginia that they can influence. And that's where it's coming from. The majority of the money that Democrats are getting is coming from California. New York is the same example. They've just gerrymandered their state to the point where Republicans can't compete, and there's a lot of money, and they just send it out to states like Virginia. It's pouring in from those two states.
Well, it's a mess, and it's a problem. And if you can't get to those, I hate to say low information voters, but the voters who are not paying close attention, and educate them and motivate them to go vote, which my campaign is an example of that. If you don't have the money to get on air, and it costs millions of dollars to do that, then you're going to get clocked. You're just going to get clocked.
And the ballot question says restore fairness, and that's a real problem, because I've had Republicans email me just today saying, hey, I live in Isle of Wight County. I'm a Republican. How am I supposed to vote? What do you mean, how are you supposed to vote? Like they're clearly not, they don't understand it. And they're like, well, restore fairness. I want to restore fairness. And, and so it's really, really a disaster. And I think the takeaway, because I think you wanted to talk about the court, not the state of the politics, but the court. It's just a great example that people cannot rely on the courts to get involved in political fights. President Trump was not able to bring a successful case in his election in 2020 as the president of the United States. Courts just don't like this, and they will find every way to not do their job when you bring political fights to the court. And we're seeing it yet again happen in Virginia. So,
well, we'll do our best to make sure everybody knows what's on the ballot, and that the ballot question was written by a timeshare salesperson. They're trying to play you. Be cautious. Tim Anderson, noted attorney in Virginia Beach, former member of the House of Delegates. Always appreciate the chance to talk to you. Maybe we'll talk about some of the other bills in the General Assembly when we meet up again.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. See you, John.
Okay. Thanks very much. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, Rosemary Jenks is back with us, the co-founder of Immigration Accountability Project. We'll talk through the decision by the Trump administration to pull out of Minneapolis. I mean, maybe that's not the right term, but to draw down, I guess that's the phrase that was used in Minneapolis. What does that mean? And what message does that send? And what are we looking at the next couple of months? Is this all politics too? That's when we return on the Reid Revolution. Back on this President's Day, I'm John Reid. You're watching the Reid Revolution, and we're joined by one of our most popular guests in the first 2 months that we've been on the air, Rosemary Jenks, who you know is the co-founder of the Immigration Accountability Project. And Rosemary, I was thinking of you when I saw the president in the White House announcing the drawdown in Minneapolis. I have been distressed to see the violence on the streets, but my reaction to the violence is you've got a bunch of radicals who will literally kill and cause other people to lose their lives to protect illegal numbers based on politics. I don't think this is actually about trying to help your neighbors or anything. I think this is pure politics, and the Trump team is kind of giving into it, it seems. Give me another version of this that's a little more optimistic. And good morning.
Good morning, John. I think there is potentially another option that's more optimistic, and that is that I think part of the administration's goal is to encourage cooperation between state and local law enforcement and ICE. That makes the job of actually removing criminal aliens a lot easier. So, I mean, the reason that we have riots
and at the when they go to the jails.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. The reason we had the riots in Minneapolis is because state and local law enforcement were not cooperating because it's a sanctuary city. So if we can use this episode to convince sanctuary jurisdictions to actually cooperate to avoid this kind of, public safety issue, then that's a good thing. But the other thing we need to see as a result of this, and it's a drawdown, it's not a withdrawal. The normal Minnesota ICE office is staying there. There will continue to be enforcement efforts there. It's just that the surge is being backed off. But what I hope we'll see is an increase in worksite enforcement, because that's the next step for this administration to kind of move into phase 2 of mass deportations. Because, if you're picking up people at the jails, that's great. And we want to remove those criminal aliens, but we want to remove illegal aliens, period. So to do that, we need to start focusing on worksite enforcement. And so I really am hoping that that will be kind of phase 2 of this mass deportation plan.
Will there be cooperation with that on the streets? Have we gotten any indication that Tim Walz and Mayor Fry of Minneapolis are interested in allowing cooperation there? I would think that would be another place they would draw the line. If they won't get rid of the criminals, then why would they cooperate with somebody who's hammering in nails building houses?
So it's going to be a lot more difficult for the protesters to decide which employers are being targeted by ICE in worksite enforcement. So that's going to be one issue. It'll be harder to coordinate protests. And it doesn't actually really require the cooperation of state and local officials, because hiring an illegal alien is a federal crime. So ICE has full authority to go in to the employers and ask for the paperwork, the I-9 forms that the employers are supposed to fill out for every employee, and actually do audits and then apprehend and remove the illegal aliens they find on the work site. So, if they do this to a lot of random businesses in the downtown area, they're going to have riots in Minneapolis because it's Minneapolis. If they do it in, construction firms or, businesses kind of on the outskirts of town, it'll be a whole lot easier for them to actually get the job done effectively.
How many people are we talking about, let's say in Minneapolis and environs, are in that situation where they have arrived, they've either forged the paperwork, they've bought fake paperwork, they've overstayed their visa, which did give them the right to be here originally, but then they never renewed, or they didn't leave the way they were supposed to. Are we talking a massive number? And will they get cooperation from the business owners to say, "Ooh, I don't need this smoke. Let me get rid of these folks"?
Well, I think there are a couple things that need to happen here. First of all, the vast majority of illegal aliens come here to work. They want to earn money and send it home, and then, eventually they'll retire home with a nest egg of money that will go a lot further there than here. So jobs are really the linchpin of illegal immigration. Are employers going to be happy with this? No, not if they're flouting the law and hiring illegal aliens. Now, in order to be convicted of the crime of employing an illegal alien, an employer has to do it knowingly. So as long as employers have filled out all the paperwork they're required to do, done the document checks they're required to do, and especially if they use E-Verify, then it will be very difficult to show that they knowingly hired illegal aliens. But it is disruptive to employers if they have, large numbers of illegal aliens on the payroll. A, they're breaking the law, but B, they're probably undercutting their competitors by paying lower wages. So it's not a fair system to the law-abiding employers. And this is where we're going to find the largest number of illegal aliens. They're going to be in work sites, on farms, in construction companies, in the hospitality industry. So that's the next place to go.
What are you hearing across the country? There's been so much attention focused on Minnesota and Minneapolis and those Democrat leaders. Let's go to a part of the country, somewhere in Texas, perhaps, where perhaps you don't have left-wing leaders, but you've still got a significant number of people who are working without documentation. Is there more cooperation there, and that's why we're not hearing about the problems?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most of the illegal alien apprehensions have been done in states like Florida, Texas, where state and local police are cooperating. So we don't have the riots, we don't have the protests, because for most of America, it makes sense that we should enforce our immigration laws. You know, immigration laws are no different than any other laws. Why wouldn't we enforce them? And if we don't enforce them, if we say, you know, immigration laws don't really matter, well, what other laws don't matter? What laws do I get to break? Do I have to pay my taxes? You know, I mean, I'm paying for a lot of this illegal immigration, subsidizing these employers who are hiring illegal aliens. So, you know, it just raises a lot of questions that most Americans think, well, no kidding. Of course, we should enforce our laws. We should have secured the border, you know, years and years ago. We didn't. And now we're paying the price for 4 years of Biden's mass illegal immigration. And yeah, it's going to be just uncomfortable for some people. It's going to mean that, you know, the nice guy down the street who's here illegally and working at the, you know, mechanic shop or wherever is going to be deported. But that's what enforcing the rule of law means. The law has to apply equally to everyone, whether you commit an additional crime or not.
How did Obama pull this off without anybody raising hell about it and huge numbers of people deported, supposedly? I was completely oblivious to that element happening behind the scenes when he was president. There were a lot of other things we were talking about, but I wouldn't have guessed that he was getting rid of people.
Well, there are a couple things that happened with Obama. First of all, those numbers that you hear tossed around all the time are fake. What Obama did for the first time ever is start counting expulsions at the border or just turnarounds as deportations. Those are not deportations. Deportations are from the interior of the country where you go through a process to actually remove the illegal alien, and that goes on his record. So if he comes back again, then he's a felon. So what Obama did is just combine all those numbers. You know, when a Border Patrol agent apprehends an illegal alien at the border and is able to just kind of shove them back across the border, he counted that as deportation. So that's one thing. But of course, the other thing is that Democrat leaders, elected officials around the states, were not calling ICE the Gestapo and Nazis and all of these other terrible things and putting targets on their backs. So, you know, that's why we didn't see riots. You know, there were the immigration pro-mass amnesty people were complaining, but they weren't rioting because Democrat elected officials didn't want them to.
Yeah, it really is a disingenuous situation where you don't riot unless it's your opponent in office, and then you create so much chaos, drama, and conflict and violence, and then you offer yourself up as the solution to the chaos, violence, and conflict that you created yourself. That's a really bad way to govern, and I hope people see the game that's being played there. One of the other issues that I'd become more and more concerned about is not so much the guy who comes over from Guatemala who wants to get a basic job. I mean, we should be managing that if it is allowed under the law, and it should be a process that's respected. But the cultural takeover that seems to be happening in a lot of communities across the United States, and is there a plan that we're not talking about to discern who is arriving in the country and what their intention is? Is it to assimilate into Western society, or is it to colonize the United States for another religion, another way of living?
Yeah, so I don't think there is a solid plan in place right now. I think that the
Am I
bottom line
making it
is
up? Do you think that that's an unreasonable thing to be concerned about, or?
absolutely not. And the State Department under Marco Rubio has done some of this where they're actually looking at prospective immigrants' social media posts to see if they're anti-American or, anti-Trump. That's all good. But the bottom line is the numbers are too high. When we're admitting over 1 million legal immigrants as lawful permanent residents every single year, plus another 1 million or so guest workers legally every year, and then we have the illegal population on top of that, the numbers are so high that an individual can come into the United States, move into a city or a town where basically he or she is surrounded by people from the home country. They don't have to learn English. They don't have to change any of their cultural practices because they're surrounded by the community from the home country. That needs to change. We have got to refocus on assimilation if we want to save our country.
How do you do that? Because there's a lot of hostility, and I think it's probably left-wing people who have been conditioned to we're all the same wherever you are around the world. Everybody's the same. All the religions are religions of peace, so you don't have to worry about open hostility. I mean, forget the people who are being beheaded on the beach in the Middle East and the bombs that regularly go off and the slaughters that are happening around the world. Apparently, that is impossible for that to come here in their minds. So they're operating in a Hallmark card, Disney World version of cultural diversity. How do you solve this problem under the laws that we've got now?
So I think it's worse than you're even describing, John, because there are, in my view, far too many people in the United States who don't believe there is a valuable American culture. They don't believe we have anything worth preserving here. So it's just fine for them to see this kind of polyglot of cultures and mixes happening in America because there's nothing to preserve. So if that's your worldview, then America's already gone. Now, those of us who actually believe that there is an American culture and that it is worth preserving, that it is essentially the source of Western civilization, the freedom and the rule of law and all these things, we have our work cut out for us because, first of all, we need to reduce the numbers coming in. And second, we need to actually tell immigrants, if you're going to come here and stay, you are going to assimilate into our culture. We are not going to have Sharia law. We are not going to have, these other cultural practices that we as Americans don't believe in. You don't get to marry a 12-year-old. That's it. No exceptions there. So until we get a grip on that and really decide that our culture is worth preserving, we're going to have a hard time.
Let me just ask you, what would you identify as American culture or Western culture? I mean, baseball, apple pie, and mom and Chevrolet. Okay, we'll put those aside. But I think I could make a list. But tell me what, just off the top of your head, would come to mind that when people actually think about it, they should contemplate. These are the things we believe in, and an overwhelming influx of people from other parts of the world where this isn't the way they were raised, we could very easily lose this in our daily lives.
Yeah, I think the rule of law is certainly important, that it has to apply equally to everyone. No one is above the law. Individual liberty, that we believe that individuals are responsible for their own success or failure, that yes, we should have a small government to assist where absolutely necessary, where it is in the government's job description to do that. But otherwise, we're responsible for ourselves. We don't need, the entire government structure telling us how to live our lives every single day. If we're going to have a welfare system, it needs to be to help people pick themselves up by the bootstraps, not to make them dependent for the rest of their lives. Those are the kinds of things that we need to really think about, because we're being taken advantage of in every possible way by people who have no idea of our history and traditions and don't understand, if the government's giving you a handout, then you take that and you make yourself better. You don't, decide to steal $9 billion more. So things like that, we need to preserve.
It's interesting, Rosemary, because I have had this unpleasant discussion / argument with gay people all across the United States in the different places I've lived in. I'm like, if the Westboro Baptist Church, which is notoriously anti-gay, or I don't even know if it still exists, but at one point they were really vocal and hostile and very provocative in the way they express their Christian faith. And I would argue that it's anti-Christian, but whatever. If you have that hostility towards that church and the way they went after gay people, protesting in front of their funerals and trying to ostracize them, why do you not have that same concern about radical Islam or even baseline Islam, which has a much more visceral negative reaction and entitlement towards hostility towards gay people? Why does that not worry you? What is it? Why are you so upset about evangelical, really, really right-wing Christians to the point where you vocally detest them, don't think twice about it, and would work to make sure that they're not in your neighborhood, but you don't have that concern about people who very openly also say they don't approve of gay men and women, and in their home countries would murder them in the streets or throw them off a building? What's the disconnect there?
Yeah, I think honestly, it goes back to we don't appreciate our culture. We have this kind of fantasy of the value of other cultures, but not our own. So when it's a Christian tradition that is exercising free speech in ways that many of us may not like, but exercising free speech in terms of protesting and speech, versus when it's a foreign culture that comes in and essentially, has a history of throwing gays off buildings, that's not speech. That's not protest. That's murder. So we've got to be able to make those distinctions. But I do think it comes down to people not appreciating that we have a culture worth saving.
Yeah. Well, we should ponder that. Everybody in their own time should ponder that, because it doesn't take a lot for the culture to change. If you've ever worked in an office building with one leader who was very strict about, the money and about being on time and about respecting other people in the office, and then you've seen the leadership change and you've watched the culture change in the office place, magnify that into every aspect of your life as you see other people come in and begin to take over leadership positions or even just live next door to you. I mean, something as simple as, do you take the trash out and then bring the trash can back? Do you cut the grass once a week, or do you let it grow? I mean, these are the kinds of things that HOAs and nosy neighbors pay attention to in the Western society. You're not even going to be able to keep up with the cultural differences that will drive you crazy if you're not careful about who your neighbor is going forward. That doesn't make you a bigot. That just means you want to protect the life that you have curated and earned. And I think that's lost on a lot of people. Rosemary, I appreciate you being with us, the policy director and the co-founder of the Immigration Accountability Project. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, back with more in just a moment here on the Reid Revolution. All right, we are back here on the Reid Revolution on this President's Day, and at the last segment of the show, we're always joined by producer Dan. Interesting conversations here. How are you doing?
Other than battling a slight head cold. I think I'm okay. I was telling you off air before the show, I had not been sick in 5 years post-COVID. I got COVID before we even knew what we were looking for at the end of January, beginning of February 2020. But I hadn't been sick since then at all. I was starting to think, well, maybe this COVID thing wasn't so bad. Maybe it cured me of all illness. But
Made you Superman.
I've had 3 colds this winter, so I'm about done with being sick. So yeah.
Well, you seem like you're okay. I mean,
I'm
still
managing.
functional.
They're at least
We
they're
can hear you.
flushing their way through my system pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So that's good at least. Yeah. How are you?
Well, I'm great. You know,
good.
I really enjoyed being at Mar-a-Lago. And,
I'll bet. Yeah.
And talk about having a cold. You know, it was really, really warm in South Florida. I mean, I loved being in Virginia, but I don't love being in Virginia in the wintertime, to be honest with you. And
we have a different perspective. You're more of you favor the warmer weather. I kind of favor the cooler weather. I'm a little worried.
You can have it, man.
When we get to the summer, I'm just going to be just a sweat rag.
I was happy. I was happy to be down there. And, you know, it helps when you have friends who have nice properties that overlook the ocean. I wish I was in a financial situation where I could replicate that. But the second best thing is to have friends who will invite you to come stay in their guest room and then wake up in the morning and watch the sun come up over the ocean. Wow, it's just beautiful. But
hey, may I ask you a question somewhat
Sure.
on topic, somewhat off topic? What was your electric bill like for the last month or two?
haven't seen it. I've been waiting for it and dreading it because everybody says that it's going to be so crazy high.
I got mine over the weekend.
Did you?
I
Yeah,
may
mine might be
share what
sitting
it
in the mailbox.
was tomorrow. I may share what it was tomorrow. And then I may share what I have my house set at in terms of the thermostat. And I think it'll blow people's minds. Because I live in a fairly small family dwelling, it's a small house, small abode, and I was floored by what the
I've heard
cost
everybody
was.
better brace for
it
huge-
was it was something.
Well, let me go look. I bet it's sitting in the mailbox. I didn't have the emotional energy to go get the bills this weekend.
Yeah.
I've got so many of them sitting here that I'm thinking,
we'll just take care of that next week.
no need to add any other ones. I wanted to play the song that I ran into. I mean, I don't know what's going on with me. I just keep defaulting to these ridiculous songs. Some of them are good songs from a conservative perspective, but this, I thought it might be a joke, but it's not a joke. It's,
I don't think so, yeah.
I think it's one of these wannabe, I don't know, what do you call them?
I'm not even sure.
Somebody who just
street
plays the
musician?
guitar and.
The street musician guy? Is that the?
Nah, there's a term for it, and I don't know why it's escaping me.
Of course,
Where
the film
you're
score guy is not up to
You're
not
no,
up to
no,
snuff
no,
on-
no. It
Oh
has
my
nothing
God,
to do.
what
It's
are
the
we even
exact
talking about?
opposite. It's the exact opposite of somebody who actually composes real music that's complicated. This is well. Anyway, let's play.
Yeah,
If You
let's
Come
play it.
for My Neighbor. This is the
Yeah.
kind of thing that's resonating with some people. I mean, it's a turnoff to me, but watch this.
Not normal times, and so this is not a normal Tiny Desk concert. I want everyone to repeat after me. If you come for my neighbors, you will have to come through me.
If you come for my neighbors, you will have to come through me.
If you come for my neighbors, you will have to come through me.
If you come for my neighbors, you will have to come through me.
'Cause immigrants and workers built this community.
'Cause immigrants and workers built this community.
So if you come for my neighbors, you will have to come through me.
If you come for my neighbors, you will have to come through me.
If you come for my neighbors, you will have to come through me.
If you come for my neighbors, you will have to come through me.
Okay, enough. I mean, that's just really complicated lyrics. So there's a lot of thought put into that, right? And then I couldn't tell if it was all women, including the person who was saying, with the purple hair. I mean, that was the snapshot of, the unserious, and forgive me for being harsh, but I'm going to be harsh, the freak shows who are trying to influence public policy in America. And it's shocking to me that anyone would watch that and kind of take that seriously. And look, if you really want to be ugly about it, coming through you, other than you're fat, is not going to be a problem because it doesn't look like you can do anything to stop anybody from doing something. And in fact, the people that Trump is trying to get off the streets are the ones who would beat the you-know-what out of you fat liberal slob, and leave you bleeding to die on the side of the street. So, I mean, it's just so disgusting that this is the kind of thing that's making the rounds. And clearly, this fruitcake has pulled together 20 people to stand there and sing and has a microphone and everything. I mean, it's really remarkable to me that talk about the American culture. This is the new American culture, in some places at least. And I'm just stunned that so many people, I mean, I have a visceral negative reaction to that. It's a big turnoff for me, and I assume that anything that comes out of that person's mouth, I'm probably going to disagree with. I'm still open-minded enough to listen to a few minutes of it just so that I know what I'm dealing with. But that's just shocking to me.
Well, I hear that, and I feel as though I've instantly been transported back to like late 60s San Francisco or something like that. Just as the folk music of the late 60s and the hippie movement. But
that's it, folk singer.
Folk singer. Okay,
but that's we
stumbled upon it,
and that's not fair of me to label all folk singers that way,
right?
Because that's garbage.
Yeah,
that was
like
garbage.
You say, very lyrics like that are why I listen to music with no lyrics at all. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, weak-minded, kind of dunce-like people create.
Yeah, it's
pablum.
Okay,
like that.
I feel as though
well, that's what you're up against, and truly, this is another one of those moments where. I see something like that, and I swear to God, if I was in the hospital, I would take the heart monitor off and unplug myself and go vote, because I'm not going to get canceled by dunces like that, soft-minded dunces like that. All right, you found this weekend this little cartoon that looked, I mean, really is well done. It's like it's a Pixar cartoon.
Yes, somebody's started doing these. I've seen a bunch of them with regard to now former Steelers coach Mike Tomlin, to be honest. But yeah, let's play this.
Nobody is illegal on stolen land. Let them in. Let them in. Let them in. Let them in. Let them in.
Who in the hell is ringing my doorbell at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday?
Good afternoon, miss. You've been supporting open immigration, and we were hoping we could house Abdul and his beautiful family here for a while.
Not here.
That means leave!
White liberals!
You get a lawsuit from Disney and Pixar for having that. But the point is well made. There's always this disconnect. It's always, don't take my job, but you can take somebody else's job. Yes, we need to let these people in, even though we have a housing shortage. But you can't, no, there's no room for them in my neighborhood, or certainly not in my house. I mean, there is a real disconnect with the leftist mindset, and to expose it in kind of a funny way and put them on the spot is important.
Yeah, in point of fact, that was an ad for a little short film documentary about Martha's Vineyard. So yeah, it's all the Martha's Vineyard folks who were like, no, not here. We didn't mean that they could come here, but yeah, it really is interesting with the left, and we were talking about this also off air before the show. But it always their idea of sacrifice and charity always seems to involve somebody else having to do the sacrificing and having to offer the charity, not themselves.
Yeah, so it's a nice sentiment that you can handle, and I'll go about my daily business. Yeah.
I will feel so much better about myself now that you are being imposed upon.
Let's listen to Tom Homan from Face the Nation over the weekend. I probably should have played this before I talked to Rosemary just to put some perspective in. But before we go, since this is the guy who's been put in charge, and he's done a great job for a lot of years on immigration issues, what is his statement about where things stand today?
I want to begin, of course, with negotiations over reopening the Department of Homeland Security. They center around some specific policy changes Democrats demand in how immigration agents conduct operations. Among other things, they'd like to require immigration agents to show identification, wear body cameras, take off their masks, stop racial profiling, and seek judicial warrants to enter private property. Which, if any of those asks, is the president, are you willing to consider adopting?
Well, I'm not a part of those negotiations that's being done up on the Hill between Senate and House and the White House. I'm not really part of those negotiations. But look, you know, when they say stop racial profiling, that's just not occurring. I mean, you know, ICE will briefly detain and question somebody based on reasonable suspicion. It has nothing to do with racial profiling. As far as the mask, look, you know, I don't like the masks either, but because threats against ICE officers are up over 1,500%, actual assaults, and threats are up over 8,000%. These men and women have to protect themselves. As far as identifying themselves, they all have placards identifying themselves as ICE, ERO, HSI, DEA, FBI. So they all have placards on them. So I'll let the White House and members of Congress, you know, fight that out. But I think some of the asks are just, I think they're unreasonable because there is no racial profiling. There is identifying marks. But masks, you know, why don't they talk about maybe passing legislation to make it illegal to dox agents or something like that? But the masks right now are for officer safety reasons.
Yeah, well, they don't like the idea about making it illegal to dox the ICE agent. Oh, you mean make it impossible to go out and protest in front of somebody's house and attack their little child and their wife while they're away on a ICE mission? Oh, okay. The one thing I will agree with there is, and this is a 180 for me, I was wrong. I will admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong 20 years ago when I was saying that it was an unreasonable expense to have these cameras on these cops. I think having the cameras, in most cases, has proven that the cops are in the right and that they're encountering really hostile, crazy, violent, irrational people all over the place. And, you know, take that situation here in Richmond where that teacher who was, wasn't he in his 30s? Or you I don't know that we were working together when this happened.
Yeah,
this
was
was
maybe predated my time.
This was the guy who I think was high on something. He took off all of his clothes. He was running through the highway, rolling around, around on the hot pavement, naked, charging at the cops, saying, "I'm going to kill you." And it wasn't just one. I mean, I don't know what are you supposed to do?
Right?
No.
No.
This is on the highway, but
on the high. I was on 95. Okay, yeah, it was that. Yeah.
This is the one that they renamed Lee Circle for him because he was such a hero for being high and having. I mean, he was having a mental health crisis. But just because you're having a mental health crisis doesn't mean you get to attack the cops. I mean, most people who are committing crimes, like violent crimes like that, there's something wrong with their mental health. I mean, normal people truly don't behave like this. So spare me. Don't try to use that as the excuse for getting away with this behavior. And then what, the cop's supposed to put themselves in harm's way? How many stab wounds is a cop supposed to have before you think it's okay for them to shoot the person? Huh? I'll wait. How many? How many stab wounds? How many bullets is the cop supposed to dodge? You know, like the Matrix, they're supposed to dodge a certain number of bullets before they shoot back. Give me a break. If somebody behaves this way to a cop, I'm sorry, it's awful. I wish it wasn't the case. They're going to get taken down. And
they should.
I wish there was a way around it. The way around it is don't behave like that. And the cameras, I think, would be very telling, especially when it comes to this immigration issue. If you've got 30 minutes of video and you see that these men and women of ICE are enduring constant verbal harassment coupled with physical threat, and then somebody crosses the line and accelerates their vehicle or comes after them or is carrying a weapon while they aggressively go after the cop. I mean, this is another thing that bothered me the last couple of weeks. The Preddy guy carrying the weapon. You can carry your weapon. just don't go get into a fight with a cop. I mean, I would say the same thing in my situation. I have a concealed carry permit. There have been times when I've been pulled over on the highway and I tell them I have a concealed carry permit, and then I will tell the police officer if I have a weapon on me or not. I mean, if you don't do that, what a fool you must be. What a reckless fool you must be if you don't look after yourself. And I think that the cameras reveal very clearly what a reasonable, rational, responsible, thoughtful person has to deal with when they're in a law enforcement role in modern America. Because the press and the activists are not fair. They show the person's baby picture. They talk about they talk to their
Trayvon Martin,
elementary
yeah.
school teacher. Oh, they were such a nice person. Well, maybe they were a nice person until they got high or until they were, having a mental health break. Well, then they become a violent individual who threatens others. And I wish there was a way around it, but there's not. And the ICE officers, I think, are in the worst situation because these aren't mentally ill people. They are activists who have been given a green light to behave this way. And they're being told that they are somehow patriots, and you're destroying
the governor
the
and mayor
society.
are cheering them on.
Yeah. And it's coming to
Keep going.
Virginia.
You're doing a great job.
I really worry about this summer in Virginia. I mean, this should be a big celebration, the America 250 celebration. We should be able to have a wonderful year where we celebrate all the great things that we've accomplished in America, including getting rid of slavery and, equal rights for so many different types of people. I think we should be able to celebrate that. Instead, I have this horrible feeling with Democrats in charge, especially people like, Hamas Ghazala Hashmi, who I think hates America. You're going to wind up with something that's very different and unpleasant for all of us. It's a celebration. It's a one-year thing. That's not the big deal. The big deal is the long-term damage that these people are going to do to our culture and our society. And I think it's real. Probably time for us to go, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to make sure that we remind everybody about one thing, which is, of course, the voting for Style Weekly's Best of Richmond.
Oh,
here
gosh,
in
you're right.
Richmond area where we are. Would really appreciate if you cast your vote. You can do it daily for our podcast, The Reid Revolution, with John Reid. You can vote in style. I think.
I appreciate you bringing that up. And it's relatively simple. It's not as simple as it used to be, but it's a pretty simple process. And as Dan says, you can vote every day. And then I do hope, if you're still with us here at the tail end of the show, that you will follow both of our pages on Facebook. There are two pages on Facebook. And, if you're on a lot of different platforms, social media wise, look us up and give us a follow. That gives us access to a larger audience when you do that. And share the stuff that is coming out regularly. In the afternoon here, producer Dan will have the little clips of these interviews. If you're willing to share them with people so that they get a feel for what we're talking about and, are introduced to the program, that would be terrific.
And I'll let our podcast family, as I think we have to call them now. We can't call them just the listening family anymore, or the watching family, because people could be watching, could be listening. Our podcast family. I tabulated our numbers for the first month. We ended up with 5.5 million views or interactions in one form or another with some aspect, at least, of our podcast for the first month, for our inaugural month of the Reid Revolution.
Seems good.
And we're averaging at this point more than 1 million views per week on social media. So that's great.
And I thank everybody who is sharing that content so that we can drive those numbers up.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Much thanks. Much thanks.
All right. Who do we have tomorrow? We've got Patty Lyman.
Mike
Emanuel from Fox News, and Patty
10:20.
Lyman, who is the Republican National Committee woman from Virginia, also an attorney. I'll get her take on what needs to happen to prevent the Democrat takeover of the state. And then a couple of surprises throughout the week here. So I hope you'll join us again tomorrow for another edition of the Reid Revolution. Have a great President's Day.